Here are 10 things you need to remember when writing and designing your escape room. What's up guys, this is Keith here with Puzzle Creative. Today we're going to talk about 10 things to keep in mind when writing and designing a new escape game. Whether you're just starting out and getting ready to build your first game, or you're a seasoned pro that's designed dozens of games over the years, if you keep these 10 things in mind, it's going to help you to create the best game possible. Let's jump into it. Number 10, budget. Your budget is going to play a really important role when writing and designing your escape room, and ultimately it's going to help shape the type of game that you should choose to do. If you're working with a $30,000 budget, you're going to be able to do some pretty cool things. Creativity doesn't always have to be expensive, but it is going to limit some of the things you're going to be able to do. If you're wanting to build out a full submarine that looks incredibly immersive and make players feel like could dive to the depths of the ocean at any given time, you may not be able to do that for $30,000. So think about the things that you can do that are within that range. Also, if you're going to buy a lot of the props you're using for a room, let's say you're building a jungle or a ruins themed room, and you find a life-size Olmec head just like they have on Legends of the Hidden Temple that's $10,000, you may not want to spend a third of your budget on one prop. So just keep that in mind. Don't let your budget discourage you or weigh you down. We've played games that were built with $15,000 that were incredible. A small budget isn't the end of the world, and knowing your budget up front will help you to strategize the best theme and the best way to bring your vision to life. Number 9, compelling storylines. In 2015, most escape rooms were just an eclectic set of puzzles kind of put together with really no rhyme or reason. But as the industry's evolved and players and enthusiasts have evolved with it, you can't just throw a hodgepodge group of puzzles together and call it a day. More and more, players crave compelling and coherent storylines in their escape rooms. Your narrative is going to be what hooks them and keeps them playing along. Ultimately, players want to know, why are we here? What's the goal of all this? And ultimately, does this check out? Your storyline needs to pass what I call the Tooth Fairy test. As a kid, it's really easy to believe in Santa Claus because he gives presents to kids that are good and he doesn't give them to kids that are bad. That logic checks out. But if you start asking about the Tooth Fairy, it's really easy to make that one unravel. Why in the world does he want all those teeth? When players ask themselves, why are we doing this in an escape room, there needs to be a clear and logical answer. If you have them in a prison themed game and make them do a Sudoku puzzle in order to get a 5-digit code to put into a lock that opens up a box that has a key that unlocks their handcuffs, and they ask, why are we doing this? The answer can't be just because. As you're writing and designing your games, make sure you have a storyline that's clear and easy to follow, and build all of your puzzles around that. Number 8, flow of the game. This is a really important one to keep in mind. A good escape room is going to feel a little bit like a roller coaster. It's going to have lots of twists and turns and ups and downs. But you need to build momentum in certain areas in order to accomplish those things. You don't want to start your game off with the hardest possible puzzle. You want to build towards that. Create a few easier tasks at the beginning to build momentum among the players. This also helps stragglers and naysayers to buy into the game because you've created a really easy win right out of the gate. Pace the game well with good ebbs and flows. Have multiple tracks, then bring them back together and separate them apart again. This will create a really satisfying game where players are able to divide and conquer, but ultimately team up and work together again and keep you from having too many bottlenecks in your game. A seamless flow keeps players engaged and prevents frustration. Make sure each puzzle flows logically into the next and creates a steady place where the end of the game feels like the descent of a ride. We find that the best games have a moment towards the end where everything starts on a downhill trajectory, ultimately landing at the end. Number 7, immersive environment. Much like an audience member at a movie or a play, we ask our players to have a certain level of suspension of disbelief whenever they come play our games. They know they aren't actually time travelers or pirates or whatever it is they're tasked with being in the storyline of the game, but we ask them to play along, and the best way to do that is to create an environment that draws them in. Your goal should be to create a space that transports players into your story. You may not always be able to create cement walls inside of games, but you can use ambient lighting and sounds to help fully immerse the players in the environment around them. Play with their senses. If you've got a restaurant-themed room and you need them to go into the meat locker to get something, make sure that room is really, really cold. That's going to help them to buy into the fact that they're actually inside of a meat locker and not just a closet inside of an office building. Rely on the elements. Use real sand, water, bricks, things that they can actually touch and interact with whenever possible. This will help to suck players into the game and make them feel like they're actually a part of something, and not just in the wing of a strip mall or a shopping center. The more immersive the environment, the greater emotional investment the player will have in the game. Remember though, No matter how immersive the environment, it won't make up for a bad game. Number 6, know your audience. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but when we're writing and designing games, I like to see things that I would want to play or I would want to do, but that doesn't always coincide with what the customer wants. We used to have a fully licensed game with the NBA that was built around the Memphis Grizzlies, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I'm a huge Grizzlies fan, and I love sports in general. What I quickly found out, though, was that the Venn diagram of people who love the Grizzlies and people who love escape rooms only touch in just the tiniest area, and that one little dot right there was me. You always want to keep your customers in mind. Design puzzles and themes that cater to the interest of your target demographic. If you've got a bunch of younger kids that come to your business, then maybe a scary, horror, gory themed room isn't the best choice to go with. If you've got a sci-fi room that's your least popular game, doubling down and opening up another version of sci-fi probably isn't the best choice either. Listen to your customer base and look at what's booking to help hone in on a great theme when you're writing and designing your game. Tailoring your game to your audience ensures a fun and satisfying experience for everyone. Number 5, keep it fresh. Along those same lines, you want to make sure you have a really diverse catalog of games. This means your rooms should feel different, look different, and play differently. So if the last room you opened was an Aztec temple, you may not want to go with an Egyptian themed room because they're going to feel very similar. Maybe in your last room you had a really cool secret door that led to a slide that players slid down to get to the next room. For this next game, come up with a new and exciting way to get players from room to room that isn't exactly the same, but will still wow and delight your customers. People don't want to feel like they're playing the same game over and over again. So push yourself to differentiate yourself not just from your own games, but from other games in the industry. Innovation is king in the escape room industry, and few things are more exciting to an enthusiast than coming across a puzzle or a way to solve something that they've never seen before. Number 4, what's the last game you built? Like it or not, your customers are always going to be comparing you to yourself. Each new room you open, they're going to be judging to see if you got better or if you've fallen off. It's nearly impossible to constantly beat yourself, but it is good to keep in mind how your new project will compare to your last project. Maybe it can't top it, but what ways can it be a little bit better or stand out? We like to think about every third room we build as a reputation builder, something that breaks new ground and stands out not just in our own company, but hopefully in the industry as a whole. When was the last time you built a game that you felt truly leveled up your reputation and got people talking? If it's been a while, then maybe it's time to push the envelope a little bit with this build and create something truly amazing, something better than you've ever done before. Building and designing rooms can be exhausting though. If your last game was nearly 2,000 square feet and featured a life-size animatronic T-Rex, you may not be able to beat that one. But think about the ways that you could improve upon it or stand out in some way. Thinking about your last build will help you to keep in mind any pitfalls you might have encountered and lessons you learned to ensure that your next game goes smoother from start to finish and leads to the overall creation of a better game. Number 3, marketing and timing. What's the rollout for your new game going to look like? Are you going to tease the announcement first and then do a full thing? Are you going to do an email blast or just drop it on social media? How far in advance are you going to make the announcement? If you do it too early, then it's going to lose some steam and people won't feel as compelled to book. But if you do it too late, well, not everyone's going to be able to drop what they're doing and book the weekend of. You want to make sure you have a really good marketing plan in place for announcing the room and generating buzz and excitement. You also want to keep in mind the time of year that you're opening this room. You might start writing a really cool horror game in March, but it gets delayed and doesn't open until December. Do you really want to open a scary room around the Christmas holiday? Maybe not. You also want to make sure you're opening up a new room during the best time of year possible. Capitalize on those busy seasons and max out that opening weekend. We tend to always make our announcements about 2 weeks out from the actual opening. We found that that's kind of the sweet spot for generating enthusiasm and getting people to book without being too far in advance to lose any steam or momentum. The timing of your announcement and how you roll it out can really make or break a new room opening, so make sure you keep that in mind from the very beginning. Number 2, variety of puzzles. I believe that it was Gandhi who once said, variety is the spice of life, and that's something to keep in mind when you're writing and designing your new games. Remember, no matter how immersive the environment, it's not going to make up for a bad game. We once played a game with a really cool set that felt like we were walking onto a movie, but the gameplay was all 5-digit locks or 5-digit keypads, and ultimately it felt really repetitive and led to a pretty boring game. Even if you have a really cool or unique puzzle concept and you repeat it multiple times over the course of an hour, it's not going to make for a really enjoyable game. Don't be afraid to mix things up if you can come up with a unique idea that fits within the storyline of your game. A variety of puzzles is going to keep things fun and engaging, cut down on repetition, and ensure that there's something for everyone in your games. And the number one thing to keep in mind is make sure your game is fun. This is the number one thing to keep in mind when writing and designing a new game. It can be really easy to get bogged down by all the other things we have to keep in mind, but at the end of the day, if we aren't creating experiences that make people smile and laugh and gets people talking, then ultimately we've missed the mark. Probably the number one violator of this is making people search for hidden keys. Please don't make people search for hidden keys. People lose their keys all the time. Honest to God, I don't know where my keys are right now. That's just not very fun to have to pay money to come search for hidden keys. That's an experience that you can get at your home at any time. A lot of times when we're writing and designing a new game, we ask out loud, what's the most fun thing we could do right here? That's a really great way to break up the monotony of room writing and help to push things forward to come up with things that are really unique and exciting to put into your games. Remember the goal of delighting and exciting your customers and creating a game that will leave a lasting impression on people. So there you have it, 10 things to keep in mind when writing and designing your escape room. If you remember these tips, you'll constantly be creating unique and exciting games that will thrive in your market, but also attract enthusiasts to you as well. If you like what you heard, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more owner tips and tricks. And if you want a deeper dive into this subject or a variety of others, then get your tickets for PuzzleCon today.